The Apples of Idunn. The gods of Asgard, or the Aesir as they were also known, owed their continued immortality to the goddess Idunn, who cultivated the orchard of the golden apples of eternal life. This is the story of how Idunn and the golden apples were once stolen from Asgard, and what the consequences of that theft were. One fine day, when all was well in Asgard, Odin and his brother Herre decided to take a trip outside the realm of the gods and do a little hunting. Now Loki, the god of mischief, heard about this, and being bored in Asgard because he had no one to tease and provoke, as Thor had gone off to fight with the storm giants in Jotunheim, and Baldur was wandering around somewhere down on Midgard, immediately invited himself along for the trip. The three gods set off on foot, and spent the first night in a great wood, sleeping under their cloaks beneath the canopy of the skies, after eating the provisions they had brought along with them. The following day they marched for many, many miles, crossing rivers and climbing mountains, until they found themselves in rocky, empty terrain. They camped for the night next to a trickling mountain stream, so they had plenty to drink, but caught nothing to eat to satisfy the whining pangs of hunger that had begun to creep into their bellies. The next day they decided to keep marching north and continue their exploration of the barren foothills in which they found themselves. Eventually, just before dusk, they came across a herd of unbranded cattle on the edge of a dark forest. Stomachs rumbling with hunger as they had not eaten for over 20 hours, Herre knocked an arrow to his great hunting bow and shot a particularly large and succulent-looking ox from a range of about 800 yards. The beast died instantly when the arrow struck, and the three Asgardians immediately built a fire and prepared to cook their kill. When the ox had been roasting on a spit for a good hour, Odin, his stomach rumbling and his mouth watering, tore off a leg and took a bite, only to spit the flesh out in surprise, because it tasted as raw and cold as if it had never been cooked. Odin frowned, and Loki continued to turn the spit, Herre throwing more wood on the fire to build up the heat and speed up the cooking. After another hour, Herre took his knife and cut off a strip of the calf's blackened flesh. He too spat out the meat, which, even though the carcass was well charred on the outside and smoking, remained raw and cold. "There's something fishy going on here," said Odin, scratching his bearded chin thoughtfully. "Smells like magic to me, brother." Just then a loud, screeching voice shouted out, "Cert, the fire demon couldn't cook that meat unless I allowed it, so you Asgardians haven't got a hope." The three gods, who had thought they were alone, spun around, scanning the trees and bushes for the source of the voice, but at first they could see nobody. Then Odin shouted imperiously, "Who are you? Come out and show yourself." With that, an enormous eagle that had been perched at the top of a gnarled and ancient oak tree swooped down and perched on one of the thick lower boughs. "You're wasting your time. That meat won't cook unless I allow it," said the eagle in a gloating tone. Now Odin, who didn't like it when supernatural eagles didn't answer his questions and kept him from eating his dinner, snapped, "Well, do so then. Or is it your way to starve visitors to death in your land?" The eagle retorted, "Only if you promise to let me eat my fill first. After all, they are my cattle." Realizing that they faced a magic as powerful as their own, and as they were a long way from home, and getting hungrier by the minute, the gods quickly agreed to the eagle's demand. "Give it another minute and that'll do it then," said the eagle, jumping off its perch and flapping to the ground as it spoke. A minute later, the roasted carcass was on the ground in front of the giant eagle, and it began to rip off huge chunks of succulent-looking, wonderful-smelling meat. However, the gods' initial wonderment soon turned to annoyance and then anger, as the greater part of the carcass was gobbled up in a matter of minutes, and in record time all they were left with was a few bones. Loki, who was a greedy glutton at the best of times, was livid at being tricked by the eagle, and in a fit of rage picked up a solid, knotty oaken branch from the ground, intending to batter the eagle, break its skull and cut it open to get back all the meat it had wolfed down. But the eagle leapt into the air, avoiding the blow, and caught the club in its claws as it shot skywards. Taken by surprise at the speed of the great bird, Loki had no time to release his grip, and promptly found himself shooting up above the treetops as the mighty eagle soared skywards. Try as he might, Loki could not release his grip, and as he was carried higher and higher, shouting to the other gods to help him, he realized that he was in the clutches of a dangerously powerful, magical being. The eagle flew over the treetops for a while, every now and again allowing Loki's legs to bang into the upper branches, which felt like being birched. Then it took him to a huge rocky cliff and began to scrape him along its edge. The now impotent god of mischief was anything but amused, and roared at the top of his voice, "Let me down, you feathered monster! You don't know who you're trifling with! Let me down, or you will rue the day you crossed my path!" The fierce-eyed eagle just glared at him, though, then flew even faster and higher than before. Blustering and threats having failed, the terrified Loki, whose arms by now felt like they were going to pop out of their sockets, began to plead and bleat for mercy. "Oh, please, mighty eagle, let me down. I'll do anything you ask of me. Please, just let me down." The eagle at this point, judging Loki to be sufficiently terrified, screeched at him, "Foolish, arrogant little god! Know now that I am no eagle but the giant Thiassi, and unless you swear to bring me the goddess Idunn and the golden apples of immortality, I will fly 7 miles up into the sky and drop you like a stone, and your body will be broken like an egg smashed by a hammer." To Loki, it seemed they must already be that high, because he could make out nothing of the earth below, and he shouted, Yes, whatever you say, I'll do anything, only please let me down." "Let you down? Yes, I shall let you down, but I'm warning you, you'd better not break your promise, or this is what will happen," hissed the eagle, and so saying, dropped the wriggling Loki. Loki shot earthward like an arrow fired from a bow, going faster and faster, until it seemed he must crash into the rocky gully at the foot of the cliffs. With only feet to go before impact, the eagle swooped to his rescue and plucked him out of the air, flying up once again to the cliff top, where he deposited the trembling god, dropping him from a height of 10 feet, so that he landed in an unceremonious heap on the floor, bruised and frightened, but otherwise unharmed. Flapping away into the sky, the eagle barked as it departed. "A month from today, in the old glade of the hare, in the woods outside Asgard, and remember, no tricks, or I will break you like an egg." Whinging and moaning, the startled Loki limped his way back down into the woods, where he could still see the smoke from Odin and Henir's fire. He decided to say nothing about the truth of what had happened to him, because Thiassi had put a giant fear into him. The 3 gods, fed up with meat that couldn't be cooked, and giant talking eagles that stole their dinner, decided to return to Asgard.